good people don't smoke marijuana.
I've known Larry for a long time.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
The medical marijuana. The medical marijuana. Radio show. The medical marijuana for you and me. Ah, yeah, the medical marijuana. Whoa, 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 yeah, the medical. It's the medical marijuana show. You will know.
Good evening, everybody, or morning or afternoon, depending upon where you are. Welcome to Medical Marijuana Radio. This one is for Saturday, the 23rd of March, 2019. I'm your host, Larry Love, and we're here every week to bring you a digital history of the fight for legalization of medical cannabis and adult use cannabis. And this fight is going on all over the world. You want to be in the medical cannabis industry? Everybody does. It's going to be a multi-billion-dollar industry. It already is. It's going to be crazy in the next few years. You need to get educated. So we're going to talk to Shanon Jaramillo from Cannabis New Mexico Staffing, and we're going to talk to Shanon in the second part of the show. This is Shanon right here, and she's got a great organization teaching people and helping people get jobs in the cannabis industry. Now, is legalization really legalization for adult use if you can't grow? Many people don't think that you have to have grow rights or it's not legalization. It's like recriminalization. Here in New Mexico, they tried to pull a fast one. The Republicans and Democrats got together and tried to ban in recreational cannabis grow rights. And of course, this did not go through in this legislative session. So we're happy about that. But in New York, and the latest news in New York, by the way, is that the governor did not put money in the budget for legalization of adult use, so it's not going to happen this year. But there's an article in Forbes magazine that I want you to read. It's about why are LNPPs, the licensed producers, against growing? Okay, there was a organization in New York that lobbies for these licensed producers, and they had all these reasons that they sent a secret memo to Governor Cuomo in New York, telling them why, 5 reasons why legalization grow rights are not good for New York and for medical and recreational businesses. It's a total bullshit. I want you to read the article. It's too long for me to read to you. We have lots of news today, but that's in Forbes magazine. Check it out. All right, first up, let's talk about some news. Ricardo Baca was the first editor of a major newspaper covering cannabis. He now has his own company, and he was on Varney and Company on Fox News the other day talking about what's happening with CVS, which is going to be selling CBD. Don't get confused, and CBD for the opioid problem that we're having in the United States. So here's this report. Here's Ricardo.
Interesting news from CVS. They plan to sell CBD and products in their stores. Okay, CBD, I don't know the proper word for it, but it's the oil from cannabis. It doesn't get you high. Look who's here. Ricardo Baca. Now, this man, okay, his current title is CEO of Grasslands. That's not important. You are the marijuana reporter par excellence, aren't you?
I was, yeah. I was the world's first marijuana editor at a mainstream news organization.
Wow, what a guy.
I know, okay. It's a great job.
CBD seems to me to be just going mainstream very quickly.
Without a doubt, yeah. And to answer your question earlier, CBD stands for cannabidiol, and it's technically a cannabinoid that's found commonly in the hemp and marijuana plants, and it's going crazy. It's everywhere. It's at your local coffee shop, and now at CVS. As we read in Bloomberg 2 days ago, CBD has landed at CVS.
And it is a marijuana byproduct, but you can sell it in states where marijuana remains illegal. Is that accurate?
Exactly. You know, a lot of this ties back to the December passage of the 2018 Farm Bill. So once that passed, that legalized effectively industrial hemp as well as its many derivatives, including CBD.
So
now,
wait a minute. This administration legalized that side of the marijuana business.
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh,
and technically, it's that side of the cannabis business because marijuana is THC, hemp is more CBD. But yeah.
Hemp is CBD, marijuana is THC. Have I got that right?
Yeah, exactly.
What does this CBD do for you?
So CBD has a lot of health and wellness benefits.
Does it really?
It does.
Does
you know,
it really?
a study that published in the New England Journal of Medicine in 2016 actually showed us that this has significant anti-seizure properties. So you hear about these children and adults suffering from intractable epilepsy, and this is helping many of them. Not all of them, but many of them.
Okay, so you are very much an advocate of CBD, marijuana, THC. You're the guy.
I'm an advocate
You're
for
gung-ho for the whole lot.
Yeah, well, I think we've been lied to about both of these substances, marijuana and hemp, for more than 80 years, and it's time to talk from a fact and science-based perspective. So I'm very much an advocate of the truth and getting past a bunch of the prohibitionist propaganda.
Okay, prohibitionist propaganda. Wow, there's a Pandora's box opened right up, right there. Okay, there is a study, I think it came out in 2014, and it shows that states where marijuana was legal had a 25% lower rate of opioid deaths. So are you saying that THC, cannabis, whatever you want to call it, marijuana, that is part of the answer to the opioid crisis? Are you saying that?
You know, this is fascinating. There's a number of studies actually showing less opioid use, addiction, and deaths in states that have access to cannabis. And the emerging evidence is showing us that cannabis is an effective painkiller when it comes to certain types of chronic pain. So, yeah, I gave a TED Talk on this last year. It's bleeding edge research, but we're getting there. And there are some researchers out of Columbia University as well as the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine who are doing this very important research. And this could really cut down on opioid use. Cannabis won't be the painkiller that opioids are, but it could cut down on the amount of opioids that you require, thus cutting into the potential for addiction and even death.
Look, opioids clearly addictive, and no question about it. I see ads around New York City. Come on in, we'll treat you for marijuana addiction.
Sure.
Are you saying marijuana is it not addictive?
No, marijuana is addictive, just to a lesser extent. Roughly 8% of adults who come into contact with cannabis developed some kind of dependence on it, whereas that's much higher for tobacco, for alcohol, for opioids.
When you say dependence on it, what does that mean? You smoke
Addiction.
it all the time, every day, all day. You're always stoned.
No, cannabis addiction is a very real thing. It's just not as addictive a substance as the other recreational substances
Are you
that
an
are widely
addict
available.
if you smoke a joint on a Friday night and a Saturday night and lay off on Sunday?
Well, I mean, no, you're an addict, I guess, if you develop a certain dependence to it. But no.
Define dependence.
Well, I guess it's a physical addiction.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
That's not what I hear. I take it that if you were the cannabis reporter for the Denver Post, and you got to get stoned quite often.
You know, I was more of the cannabis editor, so I hired pot critics to do the hard work, you know, the heavy lifting. But
You mean to tell me that you were the cannabis reporter for the Denver Post and you never got stoned?
Oh, I did. I do on a regular basis.
Thank you.
But you know, I don't smoke. I only eat edibles.
Really?
Yeah.
I am told that 40% of the THC sold in Colorado is in edible form. Is that accurate?
You know, it's probably somewhere around there. The fastest growing sector of any legal cannabis market, whether we're talking about California or Massachusetts, is concentrates. Flower's going down, so the marijuana bud from the 1970s, it's still #1, but it's going down because concentrates are so simple and convenient.
Fascinating. You know, if you're not careful, you're going to be back on this program.
Hey, I look forward to it.
I'm going to wait for the response of our viewers to what you've had to say. It may or may not be positive, I don't know. But, Ricardo, thanks for joining us.
I so appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Personally, I still love my bud. Nothing better than good bud. That's for sure. We're going to be back with Ricardo in another clip in just a little while. He was all over the place this week. Let's move over to Pennsylvania, where the Senate is trying to pen a bill for adult use marijuana, they say. Cannabis, marijuana, pot, ganja, it's all the same.
Legalizing recreational marijuana in Pennsylvania. It is an idea that seems to have been gaining some ground in the Commonwealth.
Now a bill could do just that. Matt Heckel joins us live with more details. Matt.
Hey guys, yeah, so 10 states and the District of Columbia have legalized recreational marijuana. If this bill passes, Pennsylvania would be added to that list. And supporters say it could have a number of benefits.
The majority of Pennsylvanians, I believe, across the Commonwealth will support this common sense legislation.
On Monday, Senator Sharif Street introducing Senate Bill 350, making adult use of recreational marijuana legal in Pennsylvania. The senator says legal weed could result in about $600 million of annual revenue for the state.
That makes a difference in our ability to reduce property taxes, fund education, fund infrastructure, or other things that Pennsylvanians care about.
Supporters also say recreational marijuana could have a positive impact on the state's opioid epidemic and clear up Pennsylvania's criminal justice system.
It's really powerful. People's lives are destroyed over this medicine, and then they can't work, they get felonies, and it's bad.
I think we're premature. I think the evidence from other states that have done this is certainly contradictory at best.
Senate Majority Leader Jake Corman has spoken out against the idea of legalizing recreational marijuana, calling it reckless and irresponsible, saying, "I will do everything in my power to prevent legalization of recreational marijuana." Robert Rudnitsky with Philly Normal, though, believes this bill could soon become law.
I think we're getting a lot of momentum, and I do believe this is finally getting the voice of the people.
Pennsylvania has a brand new medical program there, so they're really working fast to get adult use on board. Let's move over to Alabama. Alabama senator introduces a bill to decriminalize some marijuana possession. Now, here in New Mexico, during this last session, we did pass a bill to decriminalize all over the state. Some cities like Santa Fe and Albuquerque already have decriminalization. But for the rest of the state, the governor hasn't signed it yet, but we're waiting. This is what's happening now in Alabama.
The Alabama legislature will again be asked to rewrite Alabama's marijuana possession laws. The sponsor of the bill says the state wastes too much money criminalizing petty crimes, and it hampers the state's workforce. WHNT News 19's Brian Lawson has the story for you.
Under Alabama law, there is no minimum drug amount attached to the charge of marijuana possession for what police decide is non-personal use. And the law says it's a felony that carries a year to 10 years in prison. A study by the Southern Poverty Law Center and Alabama Appleseed, released in October, found the overwhelming majority of people arrested for marijuana offenses from 2012 to 2016, 89%, were arrested for possession. In 2016, 92% of all people arrested for marijuana offenses were arrested for possession. Senator Bobby Singleton wants to change that. He introduced a bill Tuesday that would make a number of changes to state marijuana law, including treating possession of 2 ounces or more of marijuana as a Class C felony with a year to 10 years in prison. But it would make possession of marijuana of less than an ounce punishable only by a $250 fine until a third offense, which would double the fine. Possession of more than an ounce but less than 2 would be a Class D felony with no prison time. Singleton told WHNT News 19 today he wants to end the hefty penalties people face for a nonviolent marijuana possession charge. Singleton said current law is contributing to prison overcrowding, saying, quote, "We can't continue to send people to prison for petty crimes that are definitely nonviolent." He added people with felony convictions, including for marijuana possession, struggle to work when they get out because they can't obtain state licenses for carpentry and other work. Brian Lawson, WHNT News 19.
Now, Singleton said his bill will first go to the Senate Judiciary Committee for review. A similar measure was approved by the committee last year but did not get a vote in the full Senate.
Is that really decriminalization? I guess it is a little bit, but you know, to have a Class 4 for over 2 ounces, that doesn't sound good to me. A lot of stuff to be worked out. You know, Alabama. Who knew that they would get this far so quickly? Same thing with Georgia. Atlanta, Georgia police will no longer ask about marijuana use on applications. They're having a problem finding new recruits because they have a lot of people have cannabis in their background as young kids in school or whatever. So here's this report.
Smoking marijuana will no longer immediately end your chances of becoming an Atlanta police officer.
Channel 2 anchor Wendy Corona is live in our newsroom. And Wendy, they are hoping that one less question about past marijuana use will not eliminate some of their recruits.
That's right. APD lost too many qualified candidates when they asked the person if they used marijuana within the past 2 years. So they're doing away with that box to check out on the application. The results, they believe, are more qualified applicants in a very competitive field.
You cannot smoke marijuana if you're an Atlanta police officer, period, end of story.
Atlanta's police department spokesperson made that crystal clear. Drug use is not acceptable. But in order to recruit, where an applicant would have been weeded out with marijuana use in the past 2 years, APD no longer holds that against a person.
It's just that attitudes and cultural norms are changing toward marijuana use.
With marijuana use legal now in 33 states, Atlanta's Department of Public Safety is changing its process. Tuesday, Police Chief Erica Shields addressed the topic in the Public Safety Committee report.
We have to be practical about this, and so that's the change that we made, and hopefully we'll see it help offset some of the numbers.
Since the end of February this year, 135 people were interviewed in 4 job fairs. 96 were found to be eligible applicants. 39 were suspended from the application process. Of those 39, 10 from drug use other than marijuana, 5 for marijuana use.
We aren't concerned so much that you used marijuana in the past, but you cannot work here as a police officer and use it. That's just not going to happen.
The department says an improved economy is making things more challenging, whereas recruitment was easier during the economic downturn a decade ago. APD says it will step up its random targeted drug testing because of this procedural change. Live in the newsroom, Wendy Corona, Channel 2 Action News.
Definitely a step forward. Now, also educating, and we're going to talk about educating, people and getting into the industry later with Shanon, but educating law enforcement. It's kind of crazy. There's some law enforcement people that have just been in it so long that they just have a stigma against cannabis. There were articles a year or so ago about law enforcement people who, if they ask you to stick out your tongue, and if it's green, they say you've been smoking marijuana. That's how crazy it is. But in Tennessee, officers are now struggling to differentiate between cannabis with THC and hemp, because hemp is now legal in all states, so especially in Tennessee. So here's this report.
All right, take a look. Can you tell the difference between these images? One is hemp, the other is weed, and it's causing a big headache. Thanks for joining us. Now, that problem, basically because law enforcement can't tell the difference.
And they're going to need to as hemp farming grows in the state. News 4's Carly Gordon joins us with why police say that's a problem.
Tom, Tracy, we're at Elevated Smoke Shop, where you can see they have a ton of hemp products, and they're perfectly legal across the state of Tennessee. What is not legal is marijuana. Police say if they can't tell the difference, they can't enforce the laws. Tonight, they're calling for change.
Teachers confiscated this baggie from a student at Giles County High School. They thought it was pot. Turns out it's hemp. They handed it over to police, who also have no way to tell the difference.
It's been a battle for law enforcement.
Sheriff Kyle Helton points out the two plants look and smell the same. Even well-trained canine officers can't tell the two apart.
So if our guys stop, they say, well, I've got hemp. It's hard to determine what it is.
Even when people test positive after, let's say, a crash, police can't tell whether they've used marijuana or hemp, since legally hemp can have THC levels of up to 0.3%.
If you've been taking the hemp pills or maybe the oils, and you have levels of THC come back in your system, as an administrator, what are we going to do?
Tonight, officers across the state are calling for new laws. They want age limits on who can buy hemp. They want definitive punishments for those caught with hemp with higher than legal THC levels. They say it's a matter of public safety.
If they're selling your child a joint, and the THC level is supposed to be under 3, but we don't know, what if that THC level is a 10? They could be driving, or they could have a reaction to it.
The TBI is working to purchase a machine that would allow them to test a substance and determine its THC level. That machine, though, costs hundreds of thousands of dollars, and officers say one machine to cover all of Tennessee's 95 counties could mean a serious backlog in cases.
Still a little bit of stigma in the South, I would venture to say. Okay, and yes, legal hemp is supposed to have under 0.03% THC to be legal. Anything over that is considered marijuana, even though it's the same plant. And the effect from cannabis that we're looking for, yeah, is an altered effect. But you know, there's lots of evidence coming out and stories about testing of people driving under the influence, as a matter of fact, of cannabis. Matter of fact, they're looking for people in Colorado to do testing, driving and so forth under the influence. And they're finding out that maybe people drive more carefully when they're under the use of cannabis. All right, we're going to go back to Ricardo Baca again. We heard from him earlier. Here's another interview with him. And this is obviously true. It's inevitable that big pot will stifle small businesses.
Everything starts with hemp-derived CBD. You know, what we saw in D.C. in December was the passage of the 2018 Farm Bill. That was huge, because what that does is it effectively legalizes hemp throughout the U.S., and now we're waiting for FDA and USDA to write their rules and regs, and that's everything. And then we need to figure out how they're going to actually regulate the derivatives or the cannabinoids, including CBD. But that's really the gateway market here before they actually have an opportunity to get into actual plant-touching THC product. You know, right now, of course, these retailers are selling it, and you can find hundreds of brands of CBD products on Amazon because you can ship it from state to state. Whereas if it's cannabis-derived CBD or THC, that can't leave the state from which it was grown in. And so it's going to start with CBD, and then inevitably we will see a move toward actual THC products with some of these big brands. But the big brands that you're seeing get into the game right now, the liquor companies, the tobacco companies, pharmaceutical, they're all in Canada, where they can benefit from federally legal adult use cannabis that is also being exported to other countries right now, and we're a long way from that in the U.S.
Okay, so I'm glad you brought up the big brands, because is there any concern to you and to the smaller mom and pop shops that have sprung up throughout the United States over the last few years that the Constellation brands, the big cigarette companies, the pharmaceutical companies are just going to Bigfoot these smaller companies?
I think it's inevitable. In the same way that we have a strong microbrew market in the beer market, you know, and boutique hotels compared to the big dogs, there will always be the best of the best small cannabis and hemp brands. We will always see that, but it's only inevitable that these brands that have capital, that have reach, they are definitely going to take over market share. We're already seeing it in the U.S., and we're certainly seeing it in Canada. For example, you and I were just talking offline about one of the larger brands in Colorado. They have more than 20 shops throughout the entire state now. That is substantial when you can centralize all of that HR, even all that cultivation. They have huge cultivation, and they have so much that they fuel more than what's already in their stores, and that means a healthy wholesale business, and it puts out those micro growers and micro dispensaries out of business. This is a very hot conversation right now in California, where they're going through a really rough transition into a regulated marketplace where these small farmers are having a hard time finding where their role in it is.
You know, personally, I can't wait for the boutique cannabis to proliferate in different states, because these will be people that want to grow high quality cannabis, whether it's a medical dispensary or adult use. If you want to grow good cannabis, you can. If you just want to turn out crap, cut it down, trim it, cure it in 2 weeks, and get it out the door, well, you know, that's what you'll be known for. But I'm looking forward to the boutique industry, absolutely. All right, let's move on a little bit. You know, we're talking about the future and so forth with this multi-billion-dollar industry. This is from CNET.com. The tech industry for cannabis is going to be exploding. So here's what's happening technologically.
CNET recently reported on how the marijuana industry will be facing both challenges and opportunities as technology becomes a bigger part of the weed business. To talk about this, we're joined by the executive editor for CNET News, Roger Cheng. Welcome, Roger. Thanks for being here. CNET recently went to a marijuana summit that focuses on the tech angle of the business. What were some of the products on display there?
Yeah, well, I think one of the most interesting ones is this container that doubles as a smart scale. It links to an app, basically monitors how much marijuana you're consuming. We saw a bunch of different examples. I think one of the more interesting ones, the robotic harvesting using robot arms. We're definitely a long way off from those underground grow rooms as marijuana production has really hit mainstream.
It's so fascinating. Now, we understand that genetic testing and big data is also now being considered in the growing process. What's being done on this front?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot more experimentation with genetics, as you said, big data. Basically, data telling you what kind of plant to grow, what strains work best, what sell best. This is really a great test bed for a lot of these things because it doesn't really require FDA approval, which is a lot more rigorous. This is really on a state level, so it's a lot more easier to get things done.
So does all of this represent sort of the evolution of the marijuana business into something that's no longer fringe? I mean, is this now a mainstream business proposition?
Well, this is a market that's expected to grow to $32 billion over the next 5 years. So this is definitely a big business. And you're seeing companies push to make this more of a mainstream product. There are still going to be those fringe, growers who create custom strains, but I think big weed is coming in and they're using technology to make a big impact here.
When you say fringe growers, that there's those smaller sort of boutique growers that talk about the acidity of the soil and the rest of it. Do you see a branch of marijuana growing becoming sort of like wine, where there's different varieties and it's very it could become an elitist product on some level?
Absolutely, I think that's a great point. In fact, there was one person at the conference who's trying to get initiative to get certification of certain strains, kind of like how Bordeaux and Champagne are certified from those regions in France, getting certified regions or certified strains of marijuana from specific growers.
That'll certainly take it out of the Cheech and Chong era for sure. Roger Cheng at CNET, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
It's coming. Both big business and small boutique business. You choose who you want to spend your money with, and we should be doing that now as well. Choose wisely, people. In Canada, the NHL, the National Hockey League, is huge, and of course there's lots of banging and hitting the boards. And here in the States, we have football and basketball and baseball that players are using cannabis to help treat themselves after injuries and so forth. So former NHL players are going to be given cannabis for post-concussion treatment. We know this works. This is fantastic, and we need to loosen up our laws here for professional players.
A story now about retired NHL players and the long-lasting physical and emotional consequences of living with head injuries. Some have turned to opioids to help cope with the mental and physical anguish, but opioids are addictive. So today, the announcement of a new teammate, a cannabis company, to study an alternative treatment to ease the symptoms. TSN senior correspondent Rick Westhead has more.
Left for the Penguins. Crosby scores!
They are some of Canada's most beloved celebrities. But when National Hockey League players hang up their skates, many find the transition to life off the ice difficult.
I don't think I've ever been more proud to stand at a podium and to be part of this group, this great partnership.
The NHL Alumni Association has signed a landmark agreement with Canadian cannabis company Canopy Growth Corporation to team up on medical studies that could be an important step towards establishing the first comprehensive snapshot of the health of retired hockey players.
Steve Ludzik picked up.
Former NHL player and coach Steve Ludzik was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, and for the past 2 years, he's been using CBD products, which are derived from the cannabis plant but do not have the THC psychoactive ingredient that gets a user high.
With it, I get 3-4 hours sleep, which is a king's feast for me of sleep.
While Ludzig is pleased with the Alumni Association's efforts, he's still waiting for the NHL to embrace alternative medicines.
The guy you cheered for on a Saturday night struggling Sunday morning, if they can relieve their pain, either physical pain or mental pain through this stuff, God bless them.
Riley Cote was an enforcer for the Philadelphia Flyers and says a number of retired and active NHL players are already using cannabinoid products.
I think there's more and more guys every day experimenting with CBD, just giving these guys at least the option to choose an alternative like cannabis. So to me, it's progress.
Most of the study subjects will be given CBD pills to take every day to see whether the cannabinoid helps ease symptoms of anxiety, depression, and chronic pain.
The reality is we don't have really any human studies to date. We've got lots of animal models. And what we do know is that from an anecdotal perspective, a lot of patients who have had traumatic brain injuries talk about some of the huge benefits of cannabis.
If results of the initial survey are positive, officials with Canopy Growth have told the NHL Alumni Association that they'll be committed to fund another more expansive study with even more former NHL players. Rick Westhead for CTV News in Niagara-on-the-Lake, Ontario.
Yes, it's very exciting that cannabis has shown in many studies to create what is called neurogenesis, which is the rebuilding of brain cells. This is great for people with TBIs and players with concussions and so forth. Yes, rebuilding brain cells, people, not burning them up like they've been saying for the last 80 years. All right, so before we take a little break, first, I'd like to congratulate Florida for passing, for getting rid of the smoking ban and allowing medical cannabis patients to use cannabis the way they want, whether it's smoking it or vaping it was. So anyway, yesterday, congratulations, they sold their first buds in order to be able to smoke legally. Great fight, people, and thank you for being out front. Gary Stein, Roundtree, a bunch of people over there. All right, before we come back with Shanon Jaramillo from Cannabis New Mexico Staffing, in California, growers warn that California could be producing too much cannabis. Is there such thing as too much cannabis? Or too much ketchup? Or too much garlic? Or too much tacos? I don't know.
Growers in Monterey County have their eye on the cannabis market, and right now the big worry is overproduction. Industry experts say California is going to be flooded with marijuana, and soon.
I would say certainly by 2020.
Brooke Eagle with Pacific Reserve Nursery has been in the industry for years. On Wednesday, we met the grower inside one of his 22,000 square feet greenhouses to talk about where the market is headed.
So in here, you're looking at about, 5,000 to 7,000 pounds annually, hopefully.
Pacific Reserve isn't the only company growing cannabis on this scale. Currently, California does not have a limit on grow licenses, but municipalities do have caps on retail stores.
But right now, there's not many licensed retail stores in California. So all these things come into play of if there's not enough stores to sell your product to, what do you do with it then? The state's stuck and sitting on a stockpile at that point.
During the days of medical marijuana, there were thousands of dispensaries in California. But now there are only about 500 licensed to sell recreational weed to a state with a population of 39 million. So why haven't we already seen a bust? Experts on the retail side say the answer is new testing standards from the state.
The phase 3 is much more stringent. It went into effect January 1st, and it adds a handful more pesticides and also a very strict heavy metals limit on cannabis flower and oil and everything else.
Regulations and taxes will weed out some growers before the flood, and Eagle predicts the market will do the rest when it hits.
And I think it's just about who can produce the most highest quality product at the lowest price.
So what's going to happen with all of this extra cannabis? Well, some of it could end up on the black market, and then that goes to the state. They're going to have a stockpile, and growers say it will start to go bad as soon as 6 months after cultivation. Erin?
All right, thank you, Caitlin. This overproduction problem is not new. States like Oregon that also have recreational cannabis have seen the same problem, and in some cases, the product is selling for less
that it costs to grow it.
As a matter of fact, in Oregon, I saw a report the other day, $6 eighths, folks. That's under $50 an ounce. We'll be right back with Shanon Jaramillo from Cannabis New Mexico Staffing right after this short break.
It's all about the 420 MMJRadio. The medical marijuana. The medical marijuana. Radio Show.
Hi, this is Grace from Organica. You're listening to Medical Marijuana Radio. Did I do it?
And we're back. And online today from Cannabis New Mexico Staffing, I have Shanon Jaramillo. Cannabis New Mexico Staffing is a training and staffing company focused on breaking the stigma of cannabis through education. And they have a job fair coming up on April 5th. Welcome, Shanon, to Medical Marijuana Radio.
Hi, Larry. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So first, tell me a little bit about what's coming up on April 5th.
So, yeah, we're very excited. We're going to be hosting an exclusive job fair. By exclusive, I mean it'll be cannabis and hemp focused. Right now, we're building sponsorships. We've got almost 15 companies coming to hire talent. And basically, we're inviting out veterans, students, and industry-interested professionals to come and take a look at the industry and take a look at the expansions that are happening. So we've got a lot of companies expanding with the recent updates in our legislative session. So we're excited.
Right. Well, especially the new hemp program through the agricultural department here in New Mexico at UNM is very exciting. It should create a lot of jobs and so forth. So what exactly is going to happen at the fair? And is there a charge for this?
Yeah, you know what? We do have a free entry for veterans and students. They just have to bring their ID and a resume. We hope that everybody comes prepared so that the companies can meet and take a look at them from that angle. And then we do have a networking fee if you just want to enter and you're not prepared. So yeah, we do have a small fee of $5 to come in and visit with our vendors. And then when you mentioned hemp, yeah, I've just been visiting with a few companies that are expanding and they need like 50 trimmers, and as they expand, these companies will need big crews to come in on a seasonal basis. And so we'll have some of those folks there on site. Some of the perks that we'll have for our companies will be that from 3 to 5, we'll have a notary on site as well as people there to facilitate backgrounds. Okay, great.
And
yeah, go ahead. Okay, every employee has to have an MCP license ID card. And so we have a crew that produces that for us at Cannabis and Staffing and a courier service. And we're able to turn that around for these employers and the folks looking in the field fairly quickly through our services. So we'll have that crew on site actually notarizing backgrounds, and then we'll facilitate those to come back by Monday for any employers that either A, are going through relicensure this year, or B, have employees that they want to hire on the spot and they need them vetted and they want to onboard. So that'll be one of the perks. And then we've got a lot of great companies that are coming in from just various places. We have the Marijuana Show. They're going to be with us, and they're a national company with nationwide positions through Club Hemp. That's very exciting because these folks are from Taos. They're here from the northern part of New Mexico, but they're joining us here in Albuquerque. And so that brings an added kind of sensationalism to our event so that we can really drive some people from other states. And that's what we want to do overall, is try to become the hub here in New Mexico for the Southwest for job opportunities.
Okay, so you're saying that not only can you train people for New Mexico, but maybe a neighboring state like Arizona or even Colorado. Can you train people here with whatever the laws are in the other states?
Oh yeah, we can, and we have our sights on getting into some of those states and helping. The core compliance training that we have now in place can be considered a workforce development, and it pertains for our industry. Let me back up. The core compliance training that we have now in our industry and that we've created actually aligns with our regulations and the NMAC and the policies and procedures that the producers and manufacturers, couriers, and labs have to adhere by. But we can see that based on our formula, it's becoming successful, and we are looking into other states and starting to put those formulas together for compliance training and getting people ready in those other states.
Right, because you do have some online courses as well, if I remember, right?
We do. We're available online, and we're branding out a new piece of our program where we have a cannabis training center. And our goal will be basically it's available online. Our goal is to make this training available for all companies across the state to train their employees. This is really should not be a sales point for me and a hiring manager or an owner. It should really just be, let's get your employees signed up because we know this is the compliance training that you need to do per the Department of Health. And so we're working on those conversations so that we can help even like Pecos Valley Pharmaceuticals all the way out in Roswell, Ruidoso, Las Cruces, and go out to those areas. But that's why we put it online. We want to make sure that we're helping companies to stay compliant, mitigating risk, and then also giving access to this training to people that want to get into those companies all the way out in Farmington or, rural New Mexico too.
Okay, so take me through it a little bit. Okay, what I'd like to know is, obviously the cannabis industry, be it medical, recreational, or the hemp industry, is a multi-billion-dollar industry over the next few years, and everybody wants to get involved in it, whether they're want to invest money or they want to get into the business. So. Take me through the process. I'm a 23-year-old person who has been around cannabis, and I want to be in this business. What's the best entry level if you have no experience, and what classes and what would you be teaching someone in that particular area?
Sure, that's a great scenario for us to go over. I appreciate that. So, most 23-year-olds come in with customer service experience, let's say. I'm going to generalize on that because it's kind of, just one of those things. And luckily enough, the marijuana industry is a customer service retail experience. So when I look at a 23-year-old's information, we'll be assessing their skill set. And then from there, everybody would have to go through the compliance training to onboard, which is just, they have hard requirements. It's a HIPAA certification for a year. It's renewed yearly, usually around relicensure time. And then if you're working for a manufacturer, you'd have to have a food handler safety certificate as well, along with providing a copy of your state ID or driver's license. And then you would have to provide sign off on authorization to have your state and federal backgrounds run. And those are run through the Department of Public Safety. And then we have a federal background service that we use that's approved by the Department of Health. So those are the hard requirements to actually onboard an employee. Now, when an employee goes into the field, that 23-year-old would then be in a job. Let's say they got placed at Shannon's dispensary, right? Now they're in the field. They've met those hard requirements. Once they're in, the employers should be providing them with a linen, and compassionate use act class, ethics and code of conduct class, safety and security compliance, research and development class. And it should be very safety and security focused because OSHA is not involved at this time. So in the regs, it's written out there that they have to have explicit safety and security plans. So this 23-year-old would then go into the dispensary hoping that they would get this compliance training, right? Well, what we're finding is a lot of the dispensaries are unable to provide the compliance training. It's an extra hat for somebody to wear. It's a big task for the compliance officer to provide the training.
I was about to say that because, I haven't heard of anybody getting any kind of training like that at dispensaries. So there's definitely a need for that. I did manage a dispensary from 2011 and 2012 to 2013. So, I have a little bit of experience, what it's like, working with people, hiring people and so forth. And it's tough because a lot of people, they think just because they have a relationship with the plant that they know everything that they can need to know in order to work at a dispensary. So
right.
So education is definitely involved with that. So give me a little bit about a background about your education and how you came to get into the staffing industry.
Sure. Well, for the past 15 years, I have been working in recruitment through a financial services sector. In the past, I guess before I started Cannabis NM staffing, I had a small one-man band called Hiring Team New Mexico after I left New York Life Insurance. My father worked for that company And I was working with him in recruitment for several years. So when I left there, I did a company called Hiring Team, and I continued to recruit for managers actually across the country in several different markets and states. And so what happened was my father started to retire, to be honest, and I'm from New Mexico, and I started to look into the field here, and I wanted, being an advocate, I wanted to look into what it would take to work in the cannabis industry. And so as I started to dip my toes into the waters, I was going to some of the dispensaries as a patient, and I would ask, how did you get your job? What's going on? How can I do this? How can I get in? You know, the question everybody asks. And a lot of the people there were kind of like, I don't know how I got my job. Some of them were telling me stuff like, if you go get your HIPAA and your background and you come back, we'll get you an interview. And well, I started doing that, and I would put in $70 each time, taking my information, and nobody was calling me back. And I was like, wait a minute, what are the systems these folks have in place? So that caused me to really look at things, because I was really starting to evaluate, why am I recruiting myself into this industry? And so along with the fact that I was still getting sales material from that dispensary that never called me, I was feeling like, wow, this is a big customer service issue. If you're going to tell people to bring their resume and then they're your customer and then you're going to sell to them, but then not call them back, it's going to eventually affect your bottom line. And so I started looking into it from that perspective, because my brain works that way. And long story short, I realized that they needed some help and put some fillers out. And here I am. I reached out to Shauna Brown with a resume, and she invited me to their first New Mexico medical cannabis conference. We'll be there this year. I'll plug them if I can. And they actually, they invited me in, and I had a booth for the first time. But man, I knew nobody. I knew nothing. And the market just kind of sucked me in and started saying, we need help. And so from there, my market research was hands-on, because the wheels were already spinning. And now here we are 2 years later.
Right. So, I'm looking at a post, a quote by Richard Branson. Okay.
Uh-huh.
It says, clients do not come first. Employees come first. If you take care of your employees, they will take care of the clients. And that's Richard Branson from Virgin Atlantic and the record company and so forth. So how do you feel about that?
Oh my gosh, that's so true. You have to value your human resources. And from the beginning, I was visiting with people, and I was just hearing a lot of horror stories, to be honest. People wanted me to start a growers union. Can you help us? Can you protect us? And can you start a bud tenders union? And I got nervous from the beginning, because I thought, man, this is a shaky time to get involved. But then it gave me hope, because I thought all of these business owners are in the same spot that I'm in. We're all small business owners. We know we need help. Let's get together on it. And so I do agree that employees come first. If you take care of your employees, they'll take care of your customers, and overall everybody will win. Yeah.
And your background, educational background in cannabis is what? Did you go to Amsterdam, or have you gone through any training like that yourself, or is it just what you've picked up over the years of being around cannabis?
You know what? I did go to Amsterdam, Larry. I was thinking, where can I study? Is there such a place? And yeah, I flew out to Amsterdam in May of 2017. And then since then, I've taken several certificates online for various reasons, to keep current, and then also to do market research to see how we can do better in New Mexico.
So as far as there's so many different areas in the cannabis industry for people to get started at, and that maybe they want to work in a particular area. Okay, so look, you got bud tenders. Okay, those are people that are dealing directly with the clients and so forth. But a dispensary is only as good as their product, and of course, and the people they hire. But the product is really, really important. So if somebody wants to be a grower, do you have growing classes, or is that just a different kind of a situation?
Not yet. We don't have grower classes yet, but that's a great question, because we do want to start focusing on how we can help people to gain that skill set. So in the next 6 months, we'll have an apprenticeship track created through a hemp company that we're working with here, so that we can give people access to at least the hemp plant. That has been a challenge for us, is how do we get grower classes without having access to the cannabis plant itself? So now that we're on track with hemp here, we see on what's on the horizon next is for us to put that grower class in place. But at this time, we don't have it in place.
So you were mentioning trimming before. I mean, so obviously you can't. I don't believe that you could work with a plant or with actual material at your classes. I'm not sure how that works, but is there like trimming classes that people can learn? Because that's sort of the entry-level position for most people is trimming.
Right, and that's what we want to do is cloning, trimming, the first stages of the plant, mother plant to clones, all of that. We want to make sure that people, and then also the harvest, the trimming piece and all of that, right? But, and so that would be the first entry level way to place somebody. And it's laborious. It's a laborious task to trim and to get involved at that level. But it's an easier way for me to get somebody involved, because a lot of these farmers, they don't want a lot of people with bad habits. They actually want people that are willing to learn and that are coachable and hard workers. So anybody can really get in at that level, in my opinion.
What's the biggest mistake do you think that a prospective student of yours makes when thinking that they want to get into the cannabis industry? I mean, not educating yourself beforehand, is that something, or do you think that your classes can really give everything someone needs to know, even if they're brand new to the industry?
I feel like it's interesting you say that. I've had several people come back telling me, and this is just recently, I took some of your career advisement in 2017, but I thought I could just go out and get a job from there. And I thought you guys were a scam and I didn't want to pay to play. And so I went out, and now it's been 2 years and I still haven't gotten a job, but I've seen you guys place people. And so I'm back and I want to get the education so I can go ahead and be placed. And so I can see though, and I don't think that's a mistake. I think that's honest, drive and willpower. I mean, there's some people that are going to not need, a lot of help, and there's some people that just need that professional track. The training that we provide gives them some empowerment and some confidence and some vocabulary, and now they're kind of, if they're green and they just came to New Mexico and they know nothing, well, they need this training to set foot, even to have a conversation with somebody like you or me in the industry. You know what I mean?
Sure. So what is do you have like a percentage of, how many people have gone through your classes and how many have been hired? And do you have like a list ahead of time of positions that are open that you try to fill? Do you get a heads up by some of these LNPPs in New Mexico?
We're not on that, I guess, communication level with them yet, but we do hope to be in the future. Yes, we have a job listing on our website, cananmstaff.com, and you go to the jobs tab and you'll see what we have. Those are client accounts that we're actively working, and we're placing folks in those roles. And then we do have some indirect hires that happen through us, and people that go through our training and then are maybe sitting in interviews right now, and we get those phone calls. And so our data is very interesting in that respect with regards to placements, because throughout the years we have, like I said, indirect placements and direct placements. And so we're working on that data. I'd say about 35% of the folks that come through our training are getting themselves into the industry or getting in through our systems.
Wow, that's over a third. That sounds really fantastic to me.
Yeah.
What is the hardest position to fill?
At this time, the most challenging positions to fill, I would say, that's interesting. You picked my brain, because I'm in the middle of filling an infusion specialist, a kitchen assistant, and those are pretty tough. I'd say, believe it or not, if I'm sourcing a retail store manager from outside of a company and not taking someone from within the company, to have somebody at a management level that has never touched BioTrack, has never touched a dispensary, I feel like that's a really hard position to fill. I've had some success with filling that position with an outside individual, but I would really prefer that companies try to look into creating a fast track to management for their bud tenders so that these people can have career longevity. And this is a long answer for me to plug this, and that's a class we're working on, is how do we get these bud tenders from bud tender to management, right?
Right,
so
right.
The retail manager position has been tough for me, although we've done it and we've been successful. It just took more time. And now that we're putting this track in place with one of our medical and bud tender trainers, he and I feel like it's going to help people to go into management, and that would dissipate, the challenges we have.
Sure. What about the extraction manufacturing end of things? I mean, where can someone learn to extract? Do you have to be like an intern for a manufacturer, or I mean, are people coming to you from like their home extractions and want to get into the manufacturing business, that seems like a hard area for someone to actually get some training.
You know what? You pretty much, I just went, oh, he's right. Extraction is tough. So thanks for mentioning that. Yeah, extraction chemistry. We have a successful formula for placing lab techs, and we've placed several of them under people that are experienced extractors. And so we do have, yes, it is tough to answer your question. Right now, there is not a track for extraction, but we're also working on that. That's another area we're looking at. So what we do, Larry, just to let you know, is if we have a lab that is just brand new, we have an extraction lab technician consultant that we know can go in there, help them get set up, and then start to train them as well as their staff and anybody that we place. And so that's been our formula so far.
Okay, so that sounds great. And to wrap things up a little bit, so you have different kinds of courses. You have an online course, I believe, we spoke about earlier, and then you also have like live courses as well. Am I correct on that?
Yes, sir. We
Okay.
do. We're still running live courses. We know people like to learn at their own pace. So we have online, but then a lot of people like to visit with us in person. So we're going to continue that model as well.
Sure. How long does it take you to take a person to go through your online course? How many hours does it usually take to do that? People, I think, want to know that. And what would the cost be? And what do you get at the end of the course? So you have a test that you have to take, I'm guessing, and a grade, and then you get some kind of a certificate if you pass?
Sure, and I'd be happy to make it available for you. I'll have Evan send you over a free code so that you can take a look at it closer. Yes, we've got a formula online. Our students sign up. It's $120, and sometimes we do make it more affordable at about $99. So we have a lot of discounts we roll in. So they sign up for $120. They get access to 6 courses and 6 certificates of completion. They also get access to syllabi and some assets per course so that they can have resources. So that would be important links, research documents, stuff like that. So let's say you sign up for the courses. So course number 1 is the New Mexico Medical Cannabis Program. You're going to get the syllabus first, and then you have access to the material. Should take you about 30 minutes to an hour to go through all 5 to 6 modules. Before you take the modules, you would have access to a pre-test. That'll give you your baseline. A lot of people get nervous around the pre-test, but it's really just a preliminary way of us seeing where you're coming in, because we do collect data on all of our students. Then you take the test, you take the material for the next half hour to an hour, and then you take your post-test. You have to pass that post-test with a 70% or higher in order to receive that certificate. And so we're collecting that data, and we have standards around our training so that we can make sure that we're promoting knowledge, improvement, retention, and application. So every course is set up that way online.
Excellent. Well, that sounds fantastic. And when is your next live course? I mean, do you have them from time to time, or is there always one going on?
We have a monthly boot camp that we're running now with our core compliance training on a Saturday, and our next one is April 13th. So we've got our career fair coming up on April 5th. That's on a Friday, and then the following weekend on Saturday, all of our trainers and about 30 students will be at University and Central location for that boot camp training.
And where is the April 5th event being held?
It's going to be held at the UNM campus in their sub ballroom. Ballrooms A and B, and that's the Student Union building. So you can just park there in the structure, and I believe they have free parking outside. Excuse me, it's from 12 to 5, and at 11 a.m., excuse me, at 11 a.m., I'll be doing a coaching session for anybody that wants to come in and take a look at the positions, and then we'll wrap up by 5 o'clock.
Excellent. Shanon Jaramillo, I thank you very much. If you want more information, people, go to CannaNMstaff.com. And any other, I guess you have a Facebook page as well for this?
Yeah, we do. We're on all social media, so check us out and let us know how we can continue to support. I loved all the questions that you threw at me, and I'll, I take it in stride because we're building here. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. It's finally nice to have you on, Shanon. Appreciate it very much. So we'll be right back after this. Check out Shanon's it's CannaNMstaff.com if you want to get into this incredible business. And I just want to repeat one thing that I said earlier in this conversation with Shanon. That is, again, the quote from Richard Branson from Virgin Atlantic and Virgin Records. Clients do not come first. Employees come first. If you take care of your employees, they will take care of the clients. Richard Branson. We'll be right back after this. And I just want to add one thing that, in my point of view, the hardest part of going into this business is finding a good grower. Okay? Growing. Here's a quick little how to grow.
For real deal, okay. All the way. Live in the garden. Yeah. Yeah. We're gonna get funky. Huh? Can't mess up. Got the king of cannabis here. Making me all nervous. You know, the crew's up in here. Subcool. We sending smoke signals with Smoking Joe. Louis Crew. Alright, right here we going? Alright, let's do this. It all starts with germinating a seed. Some water and a wrapper root is all that you need. Once it sprouts, put it under some light. Throw it into a little bit of soil to give it life. You can't slack once the roots hit the bottom of the pot. Transplant before they get shot. Some do an early top, some let them stretch. Transition into the sunlight was next. Keep them in the shade so they don't get burned. Transplant to the next size up, listen and learn. Micro rise is key, sprinkle it under the roots. Give them water now, I'm watching them boost. And meanwhile, get your soil amended. Rototill mixed with worm castings blended. Gotta be ready to plant before June when the hours are right and you're under a full moon. And that's how you start growing a real plant right there. You gotta put your seed into the soil, let it root, and then put it into the home where it's gonna grow big. That's how you grow a plant. Now you're ready to go outside into the sunlight. That's how you grow a plant. Mendo dope. That's how you grow a plant. Yo. This next step is to get it in the ground. Whole time growing, it's never been root bound. Hit it with some nitrogen, ready to feast. Start training, mainlining, growing the beast. Put the first cage on, get to pulling the branches out. Pinch any spot at the top that's standing out. Getting bigger, now you ready for the next cage. Thick stock cow mag was the next stage. Mid-July and the days getting harder. Expanded, making roots search for the water. Keep a roll of green tape, tie 'em out often. Clean the bottoms up, get your canopy rocking. Put a trellis on the top and get ready for rain. Couple weeks to flower, got to stretch and change. I'ma train you how to grow with the sun. Outdoor, high-grade ganja 101. Outdoor, high-grade ganja 101. And that's how you grow a plant. You gotta put in work. You out here in the garden every day, training it. And once you got that cage on, you got the trellis, you ready to support, you ready to hold some weight and grow some dank. This one's dedicated to the ganja farmers all over the world. That's how you grow a plant. We gonna teach them how to grow this. That's how you grow a plant. 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 Some hard work, yeah, that's what it's gonna take. Supporting every branch, ready to stack weight. It's time to switch up the nutrient mix. Potassium, sugar, sticky molasses. Hair start forming and the crystal shine. If you like super cropping, it's the perfect time. As the buds get bigger now, please don't rush. If you want it clean, need a 2-week flush. Top coat is looking heavy and thick. Trichomes turn amber and you ready to pick. Here's the answer to the question they asked me. When I hang it, only cut off the fan leaves. In a cool place, no light and pitch black. Now let it dry until the stem snap. Break it down, hand trim it straight into a glass. That's how you grow yourself a personal stash. That's how you grow yourself a stash.
I remember when I met Mendo Dope. Always considered them my kids, and that's no insult. These guys know more about growing reefer than just about anyone I know. They study the science of dank, and this is why they grow nothing but beautiful cannabis trees, and they're dropping the dank around the world every day, helping people in every way possible. Check them out, Mendo Dope.
The medical marijuana. The medical marijuana. Radio show.
Well, I want to thank Shanon Jaramillo from Cannabis NM Staffing, and that's cannabisnmstaff.com. And also want to thank my two radio mentors, both at the initials HS. Thank you for your inspiration. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, if you are an advocate, an activist, you're a patient, you have a story to tell, a product to sell, it's info@MMJRadio.com. Again, info@MMJRadio.com. And yes, starting with the grow. If you don't have a good grower, you're not growing good medicine or recreational cannabis. If you'd like to hear some of our older shows, we're at MMJRadio.com, also MedicalMarijuanaRadio.com. My YouTube channel is LSLove88. On SoundCloud and Spreaker, we're MMJ Radio. On CannabisTube.net, we have our own channel. We're also on the OnNowTV.com, channel 937, and of course, the Canna channel coming soon.
The magical marijuana.
Shalom. Peace and love. Peace and love.
Shalom.
And chaos where it needs to be. Oh yeah, and you know what? Fuck Trump.